When Georgie and Mandy's first marriage was first announced, a lot of people saw it as an extension, a continuation, a way to keep the Cooper family universe alive after Young Sheldon ended. But what's becoming clearer with every episode is that this series isn't just riding on nostalgia. It's quietly building space for deeper character development in a way the original show never fully could. And that's exactly why a future Georgie and Mandy centered spin-off could be one of the smartest moves the franchise makes. In Young Sheldon, Georgie was often positioned as the underachiever brother. He was the charming one, the impulsive one, the kid who didn't fit the academic mold. The show gave him growth, especially in later seasons, but he was still operating within Sheldon's story. His emotional beats were important, yes, but they were rarely the central focus. Even when he matured, stepping up as a provider, becoming a father, navigating adult responsibilities, his development was still framed around how it affected the larger Cooper family dynamic. Now, in Georgie and Mandy's first marriage, we're finally seeing what happens when he's no longer a supporting character. He's a husband, a father, a man trying to define himself outside of his brother's shadow. That shift alone opens up layers that were previously unexplored. A dedicated spin-off that pushes even further into Georgie and Mandy's world would allow the writers to slow down and examine their flaws, motivations, and internal conflicts in greater depth. Right now, we're seeing the surface-level cracks, differences in ambition, maturity, expectations. But imagine a version of the show that truly dissects why they struggle to align. Georgie's development is especially compelling because he represents a very specific kind of growth arc. He's not book-smart. He's not socially polished. But he learns through failure, through embarrassment, through responsibility. A spin-off focused on him could explore what long-term resilience looks like. It could examine how a young man builds emotional intelligence after being labeled the dumb one for most of his adolescence. And then there's Mandy. Mandy is arguably one of the most complex additions to this universe. She's older than Georgie. She's more worldly. She has ambitions that extend beyond small-town stability. But we haven't fully unpacked where that ambition comes from. Is it insecurity? Fear of stagnation? A desire to prove something to her family? A spin-off could dig into her backstory in ways that enrich her current choices. Right now, much of Mandy's characterization revolves around her career drive and her dynamic with Georgie. But what shaped her before him? What did she envision for her life before motherhood altered her timeline? Those are rich narrative threads that deserve more attention. Another reason a deeper spin-off works is because marriage, especially young marriage, is inherently layered. Most sitcoms skim the surface. They use conflict for comedy and resolve it neatly by the end of the episode. But Georgie and Mandy's relationship has always carried a hint of inevitability. We already know from Young Sheldon that this isn't Georgie's final marriage. That knowledge gives every disagreement emotional weight. A spin-off could explore the slow evolution of that fracture. Not in a dramatic, explosive way, but in a realistic, incremental one. It could show how two people who genuinely care about each other can still grow in incompatible directions. That kind of storytelling demands patience. It demands focus. And it demands screen time centered specifically on them. There's also the broader Cooper family factor. While Young Sheldon primarily revolved around Sheldon's intellectual journey, the emotional core often came from Mary, George Sr., Missy, and Georgie reacting to life's pressures. A Georgie and Mandy focused expansion would allow the franchise to examine how the next generation handles similar pressures differently. Georgie didn't grow up feeling academically validated. Mandy likely grew up wanting more than what was expected of her. That intersection alone creates a fascinating study in identity. A spin-off can lean into themes of pride, insecurity, independence, and compromise without having to balance Sheldon's story at the same time. And let's be honest, the tonal flexibility is there. The show already balances humor with grounded emotional moments. Expanding the narrative wouldn't mean abandoning comedy. It would mean allowing the comedy to sit alongside deeper character introspection. The awkward silences, the financial stress, the quiet resentments, the small victories. All of that is fertile ground for development. Another advantage of a more focused spinoff is long-term payoff. When characters are given space to evolve gradually, the audience becomes more invested. We stop watching them as archetypes and start seeing them as layered individuals. Georgie stops being the lovable screw-up. Mandy stops being the ambitious wife. They become two fully realized adults navigating the consequences of choices made too quickly. There's also room to explore Georgie's future business ventures more seriously. In Young Sheldon, we learned that Georgie eventually becomes successful. But how? What failures shaped that success? What sacrifices did he make along the way? A spin-off could trace that path, turning what was once a throwaway future detail into a compelling arc. Ultimately, what makes the idea of further expansion so exciting is the emotional honesty already embedded in these characters. They're not cartoonishly flawed. They're human. They love each other, but they're also immature. They try, but they also misstep. That complexity deserves narrative breathing room. A Georgie and Mandy spinoff wouldn't just be about keeping a franchise alive. It would be about completing a character study that started years ago. It would allow the audience to witness the full arc, from teenage impulsiveness to adult consequence, from romance to reality. And in a television landscape filled with surface-level storytelling, giving these characters the space to fully grow might be the most meaningful evolution the Cooper universe could make.